My name is Shannon Costello. I'm a registered dietitian, nutritionist, culinary coach, and owner of Chef Shannon Nutrition, where we make eating plant-based simple and delicious using a mindful eating approach and intuitive cooking. So welcome to my kitchen. Today we're going to make my version of a vegan and gluten-free minestrone bean soup. This is a really simple recipe to put together using just one pot and minimal prep steps. You have the option of using either fresh or frozen ingredients or a combination to easily modify what your food preferences and convenience methods are. So feel free to swap out any ingredients or use something that you already have on hand. Let's get cooking. So let's review our ingredients. I know this might look overwhelming, but some of these are pantry staples. You can find a lot of these in the freezer, and you can find convenience items too to make the prep a little less strenuous, should we say. So you're gonna need about 2 tablespoons of olive oil or any other cooking oil that you have on hand. Try to do something neutral. 1 small white or yellow onion. You're gonna want 3 to 4 garlic cloves. Again, this is something you could purchase minced garlic if you wanna take away that prep step, although I do highly recommend when you do have the time to use fresh garlic. There's a lot more of those nutritional benefits from fresh versus a minced version. You're gonna want 2 cups of a frozen peas and carrots mixture. Although someone in my family is allergic to carrots, so we are just doing peas here, and then I'm gonna swap in an orange bell pepper to get that same color and look and some more nutritional benefits as the carrots. So that's an easy swap you could always make. 2 cups of any other chopped vegetables. So you could use frozen here, super simple. If you're buying fresh, I highly recommend getting something seasonal. So green beans would be great in the summer, or zucchini or yellow squash, another good summer one. Asparagus would be good for the spring. Any type of winter squash, like a butternut squash, would be good for the winter as well. But the benefit of frozen, such as using these peas, is that you can get them year round and they have excellent nutritional properties as well. You're gonna want a little bit of salt and pepper to taste, and then 1 15-ounce can of no salt added diced tomatoes. These just happen to be fire roasted as well, which is why you see these black speckles in there. 4 cups of low sodium vegetable broth. You could make your own or store-bought. And then I'm also going to add 2 cups of filtered water, just because we do want a total of 6 cups liquid, but you could use another 2 cups of vegetable broth, pardon me, to get that 6 cups total. I just prefer that, since the cartons you buy from the store typically have 4 cups already, I don't like to open up another one and partially use it. So that's just my preference. Then you're gonna want a combination of 2 teaspoons dried basil, dried oregano, dried thyme. So 2 teaspoons each of that. I also add a little parsley here, just personal preference. You could use an Italian seasoning blend if you'd like. We're gonna do 1 15-ounce can of white beans, drained and rinsed. So these are cannelli beans. You could do Great Northern beans, but you could also do chickpeas if you like. That's a great bean choice as well. And those legumes are gonna give us some good fiber, plant protein, some really good minerals as well. I'm gonna do 8 ounces of pasta. Now, I do recommend either a whole grain based pasta, or like this is a legume based pasta. So it's made out of chickpeas. There's also red lentil pasta, black bean pasta, and this just tends to have a little more protein and fiber in there to make this a very well balanced meal. But otherwise, just use a pasta. Typically it's a short grain like this. Penne is okay too, but use a pasta that you prefer. And then finally, we're going to add 2 large handfuls of leafy greens. Typically it's baby spinach or baby kale. So again, your preference. After you wash your hands, we're going to start by dicing the onion and mincing the garlic. So to chop an onion, we're gonna start with our very sharp chef's knife, and we're just gonna chop off this tail. We wanna keep the core intact for as long as possible. So we're gonna just take off a little bit of the tail, and now we've made this flat surface. So I'm gonna put the flat surface down, just pinch the outsides of the onion to hold it firm, and cut right down the center.
And we have 2 halves. So now you can remove the skin. I'm going to keep my discard bowl right here. I always recommend keeping a discard bowl close by if you have several different things to chop. So now that we have our 2 halves, I'm actually going to start with this one. It's a little bigger half. Oops. There's a few different ways people like to dice their onion. The most popular way is by putting your non-dominant palm on top of the onion as so, and then slicing about 2 to 3 ways this way. So you're going in towards the core and kind of seesawing your knife there. I don't like to do that. So instead, I like to angle my knife with the angle of the onion and follow the grooves of the onion. So I'm gonna use my bear claw to hold this nice and firm. And the tip of my knife is gonna go all the way to the top of the core, but remember, we're trying to keep that core intact. So I'm gonna go to the tip, and you can see the angle of my knife is almost starting parallel to the cutting board. And I'm just following the lines of the onion. And then once you get to the center and you're basically perpendicular, I'm gonna switch my hold into this pinch method and then work all the way across. So now I'm just kind of chopping down. There you go. So you have your slices all the way across, and we're just gonna turn it 90 degrees. And we're going to dice it the other way. So I always like to work from a tip to heel of the blade kind of motion, right? Rocking back towards you. We shouldn't really hear that chop, 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 chop against the cutting board. And there you have it. This is the only discard we have. When you cut through the core, that's gonna release a lot of those gases that make us cry. So you wanna try to keep the core intact for as long as possible until we can get rid of it. So there you go, got your diced onion. Okay, let's talk garlic. So when you separate the individual garlic cloves, to help remove the skin, you can just do a gentle smash. Put the palm on the top of the flat side of your blade, and it should release some oils, which helps to release the skin. Now, again, there's several different ways you could do this. If your clove is a little larger, like this one, comparing, and it's got a nice flat side, I like to keep this tip, or like the core of the onion, kind of same thing with the garlic, intact and cut it just like an onion. So I'm gonna pinch or hold the outer edges. I'm gonna make these slices, keeping the core intact across, and then you can turn it 90 degrees again and go the other direction. And this might come out with large to small pieces, so you can always make them a little smaller if you need, but you'll just discard this little tip there. So that's one way to do it. Now, if your piece of garlic is a little smaller, go with this one. Same way, you can release the oils and get rid of the skin there. If it's a little smaller, then I still like to keep the core intact, working with the tip or the tail. And I'm just gonna make slices all the way across until you're comfortable, and you can discard the core. Garlic's pretty sticky, so make sure you're getting all the pieces off of your knife, and then you can just bunch them up and go back and forth, chop, 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 until you get the size that you'd like. Now, if you're using fresh veggies for the other 2 cups of vegetables in this soup, you're gonna wanna cut them so that they're similar to the onions and the peas. So for example, green beans, I'm gonna cut these so they're about 1 inch, roughly. Now they're all going into a cooking liquid, right? That's what soup is. So they're gonna get cooked, and if they're overcooked, they might feel a little mushy, so that's a texture preference, but at least all the nutrients are still seeping into the liquid that you are going to consume. So that part shouldn't be an issue. So again, this is your preference, but if you find that you're using a vegetable, say like zucchini, where it cooks pretty quickly, then you might want to make these a little bigger pieces, right? But green beans, for example, are really hearty, so they're going to take a little longer to soften up, which is why I'm gonna go ahead and make them a little smaller. All right, we are ready to cook. So you're gonna bring a large stock pot over medium heat. And we're gonna let the pot heat up first before adding any oil, as to not overheat the oil. You can test the warmth with your hand, like the back of your hand, just kind of hovered over the bottom of the pot. And then you can add the olive oil to coat. So I've already turned mine on. I'm gonna add this olive oil. Avocado oil is good too. Canola oil is fine. A pure vegetable oil. You know, there's no preference over here. And then we're also going to let the oil warm up before adding any food. If you add food to cold oil, it's just going to quickly absorb that oil rather than cooking in the oil. You can test it by putting a piece of onion in the oil and seeing if it will sizzle. Ooh, just a little bit. So I'm gonna let it go a few more seconds and then we could probably dump our onions in here. Let's see, let's move this oil around. Nice, all right. Onions and my bell peppers are going in. Now you can really hear that sizzle. So again, my bell peppers are in lieu of carrots due to a household allergy. So we're just gonna saute this until the onions are translucent. So about 3 to 4 minutes, depending on the size of your pot and how much surface area there is with the heat. It might be a little longer. Now, if you're using fresh veggies that are pretty dense, like these green beans or maybe asparagus or butternut squash, you'll wanna add these here too, just to help soften them up a little bit. So I'll add an additional probably 1 or 2 minutes here just because not everything has consistent contact with the bottom of the pot. So I'm gonna continuously saute all of this. And again, wait till those onions are a little translucent and everything's kind of softened up. Super sizzling over here. We're gonna next add the garlic and saute this for about 30 to 60 seconds. Because minced garlic is so tiny, we don't want it to burn. So it really doesn't need to saute for that long. We just want it to be toasted and nice and fragrant. Then we're going to add your frozen veggies. So the peas and carrots and any other choice of veggies if you're not using fresh. And we're gonna wait for these to thaw. But I also want to add a few pinches of delicious salt and pepper. So adding salt at the beginning of your cooking process is not going to necessarily make the dish salty. The purpose of this salt is to help balance out the flavors and help these veggies release their water so that we can get more flavor out of them. Now, if you add salt later in the cooking process or you're like finishing with the salt, then yes, that will make it a higher sodium food and make it actually taste salty. So a little bit of salt at the beginning of the cooking process is a-okay. All right, so it didn't take long for these little bitty peas to thaw out. Now I'm gonna add my dried seasonings. These should be added before any liquid because this dry toasting method now helps release the oils from dried seasoning and brings out more of their flavor. So we're gonna do a quick toast with this heat for about 30 to 60 seconds. Now as an option, I'm actually adding some hemp seeds, about 2 to 3 tablespoons, because this is a really good addition to soups if you eat a primarily plant-based diet. Good protein, fiber, healthy fats, including omega-3 fatty acids, which tend to be a deficiency in those who are 100% plant-based if they're not paying careful attention to different nutrients that they need to concentrate on. So hemp seeds, chia seeds, even flax seeds have some great omega-3 fatty acids and are a very simple and easy thing to add to a soup or a stew. Okay, in go our diced tomatoes, some great vitamin C and lycopene. Then we have our vegetable broth. Yum, yum, yum. I do try to go low sodium just because some vegetables are naturally high or just naturally have sodium in them. So it's best to control your own salt additions, right? Sodium additions. All right, now I'm gonna increase the heat into medium high because we wanna bring this to a low boil. And that's gonna really help everything cook thoroughly before we add our pasta. Now, once the liquid is boiling, we're gonna reduce it to a medium-low heat just so the liquid is simmering. Then we will add our choice of pasta and our choice of beans. So this is gonna cook the pasta noodles all the way through, not just al dente, but then it's also gonna let the beans take on the flavor of the liquid and all the delicious vegetables in here. So typically you'll cook this about 7 to 10 minutes, but check your pasta cooking directions for exact time. Okay, so our pasta is completely cooked through, and I've actually turned off the heat completely so that I can add our baby spinach. Because this is still really hot liquid, I'm actually just going to stir and incorporate this spinach in here, and it should already start to wilt like that. If you're having any issues or it's just not wilting the way you want to, you can just recover it with your lid and let it sit there for like 1 or 2 minutes. But as you can see, look at that. Those greens are just wilting right in. So I'm just gonna stir those in, get them nice and incorporated, and I'm gonna remove this pot from the heat entirely and let it cool off for just a few minutes before we serve it. And here we are. Feel free to sprinkle on any optional toppings like crushed red pepper flakes, some fresh herbs, vegan Parmesan cheese. My personal favorite is nutritional yeast, and you can dig in. This smells so good. Now, be sure to let any leftovers cool completely before storing it in an airtight container, but leave at least 1/4 of an inch between the top of the liquid and the container lid, because if you're going to freeze this, liquids need a little extra room to expand as they freeze. All right, buon appetito.